$500 million. Over 200 heists, 30 countries, 20 years. Not a single mastermind caught, not a single command structure dismantled. A specialized Interpol task force is still working this case today. And it all started with a war that ended in such a way that thousands of men were left with absolutely nothing, except a very specific set of skills that you cannot put on a civilian resume. Friday, the Wafi Mall in Dubai, high noon. The Wafi Mall isn't just a shopping center, it's a lifestyle statement built out of stone and glass. Egyptian pyramids serving as the architectural motif, marble floors polished to a mirror finish, fountains, potted palm trees, and air conditioning dialed down to a temperature that makes the diamonds in the display windows look even colder and even more alluring. Uniformed security, cameras on the ceiling, glass doors with motion sensors. Everything exactly as it should be. At 12:08 p.m., two black Audi A8s fly through the glass entrance doors of the mall. Not fly in the sense of driving fast, fly in the sense of literally ramming the glass doors at high speed and breaching the interior of the shopping center, onto the marble floor, past the fountains, past the potted palms, straight to the Graf Diamonds boutique. Masked men step out of the cars, calmly, without rushing. Every single one knows exactly where to go and exactly what to do. The hammers in their hands aren't random tools, they are specialized, calibrated with the exact right weight and the exact right strike face to shatter reinforced display glass. First strike, second, third display case. Gloved hands methodically transfer the jewelry into bags. Nobody yells at the shoppers, nobody waves a gun around unnecessarily. It is the professional silence of men performing a job they have rehearsed enough times to execute entirely on muscle memory.
50 seconds. 50 seconds later, both cars back out of the mall through the exact same shattered doors they came in through. Inside their bags, loose diamonds and jewelry totaling $3.4 million. The cars vanish into the Dubai traffic. Security guards reach the boutique 1 minute after the cars leave. The police arrive 3 minutes after that. On the floor, shattered display glass and tire tracks on the marble. Nothing else. 50 seconds. $3.4 million. 0 arrests. That was 2007. Dubai had seen brazen crimes before. A city with that much money inevitably attracts a certain kind of people. But nobody had ever seen anything like this. The Dubai police handed the file over to Interpol. There, the folder detailing the operation was dropped onto a stack of other folders, very similar folders, with a similar MO, a similar methodology, a similar chilling operational calm. Dozens of heists in dozens of cities across multiple continents. One signature, one crew. By that point, Interpol already knew exactly what to call them.
But before we say that name, you have to understand where these men came from. Because crews that rob jewelry stores exist in every country on Earth. But a crew that robs jewelry stores in 30 countries over 20 years and completely outmaneuvers the combined resources of Interpol, that isn't a crew. That is a phenomenon. And every phenomenon has a root cause. To understand the Pink Panthers, you have to rewind 10 years to a place that had ceased to exist as a sovereign state, but continued to exist as a shared psychological trauma in the heads of thousands of young men. The Balkans, 1995. The war ended, not with a victory or a defeat in the traditional sense. It ended in exhaustion, in international treaties, in the drawing of borders that left absolutely no one satisfied. Armies were disbanded. Countries were carved up. Thousands of men between the ages of 20 and 35 went home, to places that simultaneously were and were not their homes anymore, because the country they had fought for no longer existed on a map.
Πραγματική πείνα, πραγματική θάνατη. Όλα εξαιτίας ενός τυπογραφικού λάθους που δεν συνέβη. Μια επιχείρηση ενός έτους, σχεδιασμένη με την ακρίβεια ορολογοποιού. 35 τέλεια μορφοποιημένες συναλλαγές. Ένα τριήμερο τυφλό σημείο υπολογισμένο πάνω σε 2 διεθνείς ζώνες ώρας. Κακόβουλος κώδικας που έζησε στο σύστημα για έναν χρόνο χωρίς να αφήσει ίχνος. Ένας μηχανισμός ξεπλήματος μέσω καβίνο που δεν άφηνε κανένα τραπεζικό αποτύπωμα. Όλα αυτά σταμάτησαν από ένα μόνο γράμμα «Ο» που ένας hacker πληκτρολόγησε ως «Α». Foundation. Τόσο ακριβώς άξιζαν $850 εκατομμύρια. Τα $81 εκατομμύρια δεν ανακτήθηκαν ποτέ. Τουλάχιστον όχι ο κύριος όγκος τους.
These men knew how to do a few things extremely well. Shoot, plan operations with limited intel, operate in small, highly trusted units, act swiftly and without panic in situations where a normal person freezes. The shattered economies of their newly formed states had no use for these skills. Those economies required patience, paperwork, and connections. These men had none of the above. Picture this specific scenario. You are a 28-year-old man. 4 years ago, you commanded an infantry platoon. You made decisions that dictated who lived and who died. Today, you are standing in an unemployment line in Belgrade, and they are offering you a job loading boxes for 300 marks a month. In the window of the jewelry store across the street, a single ring costs more than you will make in 10 years of breaking your back. Somebody found a different application for what they knew how to do.
The early heists were rough. You can see it in retrospect. Late 90s, early 2000s. The operations were blunt force, less sophisticated. They were learning through trial and error. Some got caught, some did time in prisons across various European countries. And then something changed. Either someone with a vastly different level of strategic thinking entered the network, or the guys who survived the early failures drew the exact kind of conclusions that good soldiers draw. Not we got unlucky, but what exactly went wrong and how do we fix it? The operations became vastly more complex. The prep went deeper. The reconnaissance before every job became surgically detailed. And details began to emerge that made investigators stop, pull off their glasses, and read the case files a second time. Paris, a high-end boutique on a street with heavy foot traffic. A few days before the heist, fresh paint appears on the bench directly across from the store, neatly applied to the wooden slats. Not entirely dry, just wet enough to ruin the clothes of anyone who sits down. Pedestrians see the fresh paint and steer clear of the bench. The exact spot that is normally occupied by people sipping coffee and looking at their phones is entirely empty. On the day of the heist, there are 0 random civilian witnesses sitting with a direct line of sight between the boutique and the getaway route. That isn't technology. That is psychology. A can of paint and an exact understanding of how human beings make decisions about where to sit. The elegance of the solution lies in its absolute simplicity. No specialized equipment, no technical risks. Just a can of paint bought at a hardware store for €4. And the mindset of a man who views the operational theater not as a set of obstacles, but as a system that can be manipulated. Tokyo, a totally different problem.
The Japanese capital is one of the densest megacities on the planet, with one constant feature: traffic. Not just traffic jams, systemic gridlock that makes a car slower than the subway at any hour of the day, except 4 a.m. Police cars with sirens blaring move slower through Tokyo traffic than a guy on a bicycle. The crew arrived in Tokyo, surveyed the target, surveyed the traffic, surveyed the routes, and robbed a jewelry store for $30 million. Then they rode away on bicycles, holding umbrellas so the overhead CCTV cameras couldn't capture their faces. Bicycles with umbrellas in Tokyo are such an incredibly common sight that not a single person turned their head. Not one. $30 million in backpacks and total invisibility. Because the best disguise isn't a disguise at all. It is absolute, unremarkable normalcy. By the time the police cruisers reached the scene, the crew was already blocks away, navigating the bike lanes, the fastest mode of transportation in Tokyo gridlock. Paint on a bench, bicycles with umbrellas. Do you see the pattern?
Every decision is elementally simple. Every decision weaponizes the environment against the environment itself. Every decision requires zero technical genius, but massive tactical intellect. The mindset of men trained to operate within a landscape. The official moniker Pink Panthers was born from a detail discovered by a Scotland Yard investigator in 2003. London, the Graf Boutique on New Bond Street. Graf Diamonds isn't just a jewelry store. It is the place you go when you want to buy something so expensive that the word expensive fundamentally loses its meaning. Guards, alarms, bulletproof glass. The standard loadout for a store of that caliber. Nevertheless, the crew went in, executed the op, and walked out with the ice. One crew member was actually caught quickly in the immediate aftermath. Investigators tossed his apartment, methodically. They checked the bathroom, standard toiletries, a jar of face cream with a screw-top lid. The investigator picked up the jar, unscrewed the lid. Inside, buried beneath a layer of cream, was a diamond ring worth roughly £500,000. The investigator remembered a movie, The Pink Panther, the 1963 comedy where a character hides the famous pink diamond in the exact same way, inside a jar of face cream. Interpol officially adopted the name. It stuck within the professional intelligence community for two reasons. First, it's catchy. Second, it reflects something profoundly true about the group's methodology: the deployment of simple, mundane, invisible solutions, where others would try to use complex technical gadgets. A jar of cream, paint on a bench, bicycles with umbrellas, hammers with mathematically calibrated strike faces.
Here is the statistic that explains why this worked. According to Interpol data, the average duration of a Pink Panther jewelry heist was between 45 seconds and 2 minutes. The average police response time in a major European capital was between 4 and 7 minutes. The gap is at least double. With a gap like that, not a single rapid response system in the world is capable of stopping an operation before it concludes. They weren't beating the system. They were finishing before the system even realized the game had started. Law enforcement has one standard countermeasure against organized crime: catch them and lock them up. When you can't catch the leaders, you catch somebody, and you lock them up for long enough to fracture the group's operational cohesion. With the Pink Panthers, that approach failed miserably. Switzerland, a prison in the canton of Geneva, European security standards, professional staff, architecture designed specifically to hold high-risk inmates. One of the detained Panthers was sitting inside, awaiting trial.
On the designated day, a stolen minivan pulled up to the gates. At high speed, directly into the steel gates. The gates held against the first impact. They weren't rated for a second. Second impact, the gates buckled open. Several men piled out of the van, weapons drawn, warning shots fired into the air. Guards ordered face down on the ground. 0 attempts to kill anyone. The detained operative was escorted out of the cell block. The entire extraction took less than 3 minutes. The minivan drove off. A French prison, another operative, a similar op, a similar result. A stolen vehicle, breached gates, warning shots, rapid extraction, 0 casualties. And here is the fundamental detail that investigators flagged in their reports. The crew never killed guards or prison staff during these breakouts. Never, in any operation. Not because they weren't capable, but because they consciously chose not to. Killing a prison guard or a cop upgrades the case into an entirely different category. Different resources, different international priority, a vastly different number of people hunting you tomorrow. Shooting into the air is a tactical extraction. Shooting a human being is an act of terrorism. It was military logic applied to a civilian theater, a cold calculation of consequences, not an emotional reaction.
Prison breaks became a standalone genre in the Panther Chronicles, multiple successful extractions across different countries. Interpol eventually created a specialized task force dedicated exclusively to this network. A specialized international task force for a single burglary ring is not standard practice. It is a precedent. It is an admission that standard methods simply do not work. By the mid-2000s, Interpol estimated the network consisted of around 800 people. Not all of them were active triggermen or entry guys. A massive chunk was infrastructure: forgers, transport logistics, intel gatherers, money launderers, safe house operators.
It was an organization with a horizontal structure. There is no central command hub that you can decapitate to paralyze the network. Cells operate autonomously. Each cell only knows the people it directly interacts with. Cross-cell communication is kept to an absolute minimum. That architecture is immediately recognizable to anyone who has ever studied guerrilla warfare. It is resilient because it has no center of gravity. There is nowhere to strike. Capturing one guy means you captured exactly one guy. Here is the number that illustrates the sheer scale of the problem for Interpol. The total value of the stolen goods? Over $500 million. And that's just the documented cases. The real number is likely significantly higher. Not a single founding member of the network has ever been caught and convicted on charges of orchestrating the enterprise. Only individual operatives on isolated charges. Most of those caught served relatively short sentences or were extracted by their colleagues. Here's the fascinating part. After every major Panther heist, the industry adapted. But it adapted in a very specific way. It locked the exact door the Panthers had used to get in last time. And the Panthers simply found the next door. Retractable bollards in front of display windows, a direct response to the vehicle ramming tactic. They became standard after Dubai. The crew stopped using cars as battering rams. They pivoted to different entry methods. Benches near high-end boutiques in certain cities are now repainted regularly, a preventative measure after the Paris story went public. The crew found other ways to clear civilians from the operational zone. Storing the highest value items in time-locked safes that the floor staff cannot access, a standard that swept the industry. The crew simply started working faster, grabbing whatever was in the immediate access zone and never wasting time trying to crack the safe. It is an arms race, where one side spends millions on defense and the other side spends €4 on a can of paint and 5 minutes thinking. It is an asymmetry, where the attacker is always infinitely cheaper than the defender.
The system learns, but it learns slower than the people it's trying to defend against. Why? Because the system is a bureaucracy. Regulations, approvals, budgets, tenders for bollard installation, committee meetings to update security protocols. The Panthers are 5 guys in a room, looking at the new bollards in front of the store, saying, "All right, what else?" Adaptation speed is not a question of intellect, it is a question of structure. A horizontal structure will always adapt faster than a vertical one. Always, in any field. And this is the core truth that separates the Pink Panthers from every other criminal ring in the history of jewel heists. These are not thugs who learned how to fight. These are soldiers who decided to rob jewelry stores. The distinction is massive. A thug learns on the fly. A soldier arrives with a pre-built system. Reconnaissance, planning, role allocation, speed of execution, crowd control without excessive violence, and an egress route mapped out long before the operation begins. A thug improvises when something goes wrong. A soldier prevents the situation where something goes wrong from ever occurring, because every possible contingency has been war-gamed in advance. And here is the paradox that elevates this story from a police blotter into something much larger. The Pink Panthers do not exist in a vacuum. They are the direct consequence of a specific historical moment. A moment when several governments simultaneously drafted and trained a massive number of young men in highly lethal, highly specific skills. And then those governments ceased to exist, without offering those men any alternative trajectory. The state invested in their training.
the state vanished without providing a legal avenue for a return on that investment. The skills didn't just evaporate, they found a different market application. This isn't an excuse. Robbing a jewelry store doesn't become ethically acceptable just because the government failed to set up a veteran reintegration program. But it is an explanation. And it is an explanation that repeats itself with the precision of a Swiss watch.
After World War I, a massive wave of organized crime in Europe built by returning soldiers. After Vietnam, a 230% spike in violent crime among veterans in the US during the first 5 years. After Iraq and Afghanistan, the explosion of private military companies, which legally do exactly what the Panthers do illegally, just with a government contract. Post-war eras always produce a certain percentage of men who cannot or will not return to civilian life, because civilian life feels too slow, too petty, too completely detached from the level of intensity they became wired for. The Pink Panthers are the most extreme, spectacular expression of this problem. Not the most destructive, there are iterations with vastly higher body counts, but certainly the most visible. Following the 2007 heist, the Graf boutique in Dubai installed retractable steel bollards in front of their entrance. Ramming the store with a car is now physically impossible. An Audi A8 would simply crumple against the steel. But the crew that conceptualized bicycles in Tokyo gridlock and wet paint on a Parisian bench will find another solution. They always have. That is their core competency, deploying what works, discarding what stopped working. As of the recording of this video, the Pink Panther network has not formally ceased to exist. Interpol has not announced the dismantling of the syndicate. The specialized task force has not been disbanded. The latest attributed operations occurred well into the 2020s. 800 men, a horizontal structure, autonomous cells, minimal cross-communication, no central hub to destroy. Somewhere right now, in Belgrade, in Podgorica, in Sarajevo, in any of the cities that 25 years ago were active war zones, there are men in their 50s and 60s living quiet lives. Former soldiers, maybe retirees, maybe small business owners, maybe coordinators of operations that are currently unfolding in cities they have never even heard of. Nobody knows. That is the entire point of a horizontal structure. Nobody knows. The marble floors of the Wafi Mall were scrubbed clean. The shattered glass was swept up. New diamonds took their place in newly reinforced display cases. The mall opened for business the very next day. The retractable bollards were installed a month later. The cameras were upgraded. The protocols were revised. The guard presence was doubled. All of which likely cost more than the $3.4 million that were stolen. Defense is always more expensive than offense. Always, in any system. And here is one final detail that rarely makes the headlines. When the Dubai police reviewed the CCTV footage, and Dubai in 2007 already had plenty of cameras, they mapped the exact routes of both Audi A8s from the mall to the drop point where the cars were abandoned. A 10-minute drive. The cars were parked neatly, not in a panic, but deliberately, in a blind spot with no cameras, in an industrial zone where no one would look twice at two black sedans with smashed bumpers. After that, a total void. The men from the cars vanished into thin air. But the CCTV footage revealed one more thing. A week prior to the heist, the exact same cars, the exact same route, at the exact same time of day. No ramming, no hammers, just a drive-by, a rehearsal, timing the run, checking how many seconds from the glass doors to the display cases, how many from the display cases to the exit, how many from the exit to the industrial zone. They rehearsed their egress route down to the exact second, the way a military unit rehearses a hot extraction, because they were a military unit.
A week before that, another detail. A man in ordinary civilian clothes, strolling through the Wafi Mall, buying a coffee, sitting by the fountain, staring at the Graf boutique, not rushing, not drawing any attention to himself. The camera caught him 3 times over 4 days, each time at a different hour, each time wearing different clothes. He was mapping the rhythm of the mall. When the guard shift changes, when the foot traffic peaks, when the lulls hit, where the camera blind spots are, what the fastest vector is from the display cases to the exit doors. 4 days of reconnaissance, 1 full rehearsal of the egress route, 50 seconds of execution. The ratio of preparation to action is exactly that of a military black op. Weeks of planning for a single minute of results. 50 seconds, $3.4 million, 0 arrests. And that is just one operation, one out of more than 200. $500 million in total, 30 countries, 20 years, a dedicated Interpol task force, and to this day, not a single mastermind behind ours. And now, the question the investigations have never truly answered.
Is the 2-decade success of the Pink Panthers a catastrophic failure of global law enforcement, unable to solve the puzzle of a decentralized network using military methodology? Or is it the inevitable, unavoidable result of what happens when governments train thousands of men to professionally plan and execute high-risk operations, and then dump those men on the street? And if the second theory holds, who exactly is accountable for that $500 million? The men who stole it, or the system that manufactured men capable of doing it and failed to give them anything else to do? Because a skill doesn't just evaporate. A skill demands application, and if a legal application isn't provided, the skill will find an illegal one with the exact same efficiency, the exact same methodical precision, the exact same ice-cold execution.
It isn't a law of nature, it's a law of economics. Supply finds demand. A resource finds an application. A man trained to plan operations will plan operations. The only question is, which ones? Somewhere right now, someone is sitting on a bench across from a jewelry boutique, drinking coffee, staring at the display window, taking his time. Maybe it's just a tourist, or maybe it's day 4 of recon before an operation that will take less than 60 seconds. You won't be able to tell the difference, and that is exactly the point.